Okay, so we're in Wavertree, and this is Botanic Road. I would imagine back in the day when these were built, you would have had to have had quite a bit of money to live here, especially overlooking the park. So in this direction, at the end of the road, is Wavertree Road, which leads into Picton Road and eventually High Street and the Abbey Cinema and Picton Clock. In this direction is Edge Lane, and we're going to take a walk through the Botanic Gardens. First of all, the Wall Garden.
Come on. Come on. This way, Sky. Come on, kid. There you go. Come on. Come on. Hiya. Come on, we don't have time to say hello. We don't. Come on, come on. Can she say hello? She's not now.
Now we're not just here today to have a look at the Botanic Garden. We're going to have a look at the derelict Littlewoods building and give you a little bit of history of Littlewoods and its owner, who is quite famous, John Moores.
There was a time, well before the National Lottery, when the football pools was the most exciting way to gamble, without really feeling as though that is what you were doing. By the end of the Second World War, the football pools accounted for around 15 million postal packets every single week, with over 100,000 people working in the industry by the 1950s. That gives you an indication of just how popular the pools were, which is impressive when you consider that it was simply people guessing the outcome of football matches. The pools might not even have existed if not for the dogged persistence of John Moores, who knew that he had a good product but initially struggled to persuade football fans that it was something they should get on board with and play on a weekly basis. Eventually though, they did come around, and the pools grew to become one of the biggest ways of gambling in the United Kingdom. By 1936, the pools account for around 4 million of every 6 million postal packets being sent. The good times couldn't last forever though, with the National Lottery being a nail in the coffin of the football pools. In the modern era, the pools has, however, reinvented itself and still draws a hugely loyal fan base. On the 10th of September 1887, the Cricket and Football Field newspaper offered 1 guinea in prize money for people who correctly predicted the results of 4 football matches that were due to be played on the Saturday. When you consider that this was a year before the English Football League had been formed, it just goes to show that the desire to correctly figure out football results is one that goes back quite some years. Readers could enter by cutting out a coupon, filling in the results and sending them to the newspaper. That competition had no fee to enter apart from the cost of postage, with readers encouraged to enter several times, as the newspaper knew that this would result in increased sales. Other papers soon began to run similar competitions, so that by 1910 readers of The Umpire were chasing after a prize of £100 that would be paid to those who correctly predicted 6 football results. It is likely that all of this gave John Jarvis Bernard the idea to run a football pools in which the punters would wager on the results of matches. Bernard's idea was the prize for correctly guessing the results of the matches would be whatever amount was paid into the pool, minus 10% for his administration costs. Sadly for him, the idea struggled to take off, but word of his endeavour reached a trio of men: John Moores, Colin Askham and Bill Hughes. Bill Hughes had managed to obtain one of the coupons and showed it to the others, who believed they could do a better job of running the enterprise. So it was that they launched Littlewood Football Pool on the 1st of February 1923. The name Littlewoods had been decided upon because the men were working for the commercial cable company at the time, and any outside employment was completely banned. So the men figured that naming the new venture after themselves was just asking for trouble. Askham, however, had been orphaned as a child, and thought that calling it after his birth name, Colin Henry Littlewoods, was the best way forward. Moores and Hughes agreed, so Littlewoods Pools was born, and it would go on to become the largest family-run business in the country. The men rented a small office in Liverpool and printed out 4,000 coupons. They headed off to Old Trafford, the home of Manchester United Football Club, in order to distribute the coupons one Saturday in the winter of 1923. Moores was the most keen of those involved. He handed out coupons himself, aided by some small boys that were looking to earn a few pennies working in the cold. Sadly, however, just 35 coupons were returned, amounting to bets of 47 shillings and sixpence. The 10% that was deducted failed to even cover the expenses the men had incurred on that day. But rather than giving up, they decided to double down, next time printing 10,000 coupons before heading to Hull to try and sell them outside Hull City's football ground. In spite of the increased number of coupons on offer, there were actually fewer sales than there had been at Old Trafford, and just 1 coupon was returned. Still, the men persisted, but they could not get their pools idea to take off. By midway through the 24 to 1925 season, having invested £200 each in the project, they continued to lose money. Hughes, keen to cut his losses, suggested that they abandon the project, and Askham was in agreement with him. John Moores still had faith in the pool's idea and offered to buy both men out by returning their £200 investment to them in return for their shares in the company. Keen to at least recoup something, both men agreed, and John Moores became the sole owner of Littlewoods. Perhaps he would also have given up if it wasn't for the words of his wife. "I would rather be married to a man who is haunted by failure, rather than one who is haunted by regret." What happened next is something that Hughes and Askham almost certainly questioned themselves about year after year, because the football pools was about to take off big time. By 1930, John Moores had become a millionaire. Any suspicion that people had about the pools was removed by the fact that rival companies had begun to spring up. Vernon's Pools was launched in 1925, with Zetta's being founded in London in 1933. The following year, Littlewoods, Vernon's and Zetta's came together to create the Football Pools Promoters Association, joined by other big pools companies like Cope's Pools, W.S. Murphy and Western Pools, which were based in London, Edinburgh and Newport. The National Lottery's launch in 1994 killed the football pools almost overnight. Though there had been a double million winner of the pools in 1991 and the highest UK win of all time in 1994, the prize of £2,924,622 won by a syndicate in the first weekend of the National Lottery paled in comparison to the jackpot of £5,874,778 offered by the lottery. Not only was the prize bigger and the lottery easier to understand, it wasn't linked to football in any way, so more people were able to play it without worrying about the sport they didn't understand. This is Littlewoods Building on Edge Lane, one of Liverpool's most iconic landmarks. Opened in 1938, the Art Deco structure quickly became symbolic of Littlewoods' roaring success. Once home to the Littlewoods Pools operation, the building has lain dormant for the best part of the last 2 decades and wears the clear stresses and strains of its abandonment, accentuated by a fire in 2018. So now Liverpool has become the backdrop for some very well-known TV series and some very huge blockbuster films. We have Peaky Blinders filmed here, Captain America, the First Avenger, The Batman was recently filmed here at the Liver Buildings. Creed, there's been quite a few over the years. This building is now being touted as a film studio to make films and television series. Apparently it's been signed off, and I believe it's going to cost something like £70 million to rebuild the building. It's also going to be hired out to other creatives, people of independent nature who are involved in film and theatre and television. You can see here the damage that the fire from 2018 has done to the roof. It's extensive damage right across the length of the building, and the roof has collapsed onto the ground floor. A year after the building opened, World War II broke out. the building was requisitioned and became home to the government's postal censorship department, while its printing presses were used to print national registration cards. Its vast internal spaces were used for manufacturing the floors of Halifax bombers, barrage balloons, and various types of woolen material. Now, I guess most people will know that Littlewoods branched out into the retail business, and they had a catalogue where you could shop at home. It was basically a department store in a printed book, and you could pay off your debt in weekly instalments. They also opened retail shops, high street shops, and at the height of their popularity, they employed over 30,000 people. Now, I don't know if there's a controversy about who designed the building, but reading through literature to research the building, it says it's probably designed by Scottish architect Gerald de Courcy Fraser. So I'm going to go along with that, and if it's any different, I'm sure someone will let me know. Now, despite being abandoned since I think it was 2003, and going through various stages of dereliction ever since, this is still a very imposing building. It's really quite spectacular. Underneath the Littlewoods building is a Second World War air raid shelter, and when it was discovered, people were surprised to find that the walls are lined with portraits painted by an unknown artist, and basically they're faces of the Blitz. So since the war, the portraits of the people that once filled the shelter have remained untouched, kind of frozen in time for 80 years or more. But now some of them have been identified. A photographer called Kyle May photographed the portraits from the walls, and he did an exhibition of his work at the Western Approaches HQ last December 2021 through to January this year, 2022. So as we turn the corner here from Edge Lane, you can see by the name on the wall that this is Liverpool Innovation Park, and that's on the opposite side of the road there. Plenty of technology-based companies. So if this did turn into a film studio, it's probably in the right place. Plenty of techie neighbours. I'm just going to take a look at the other side of the building. There's a couple of signs which say private property and do not enter. So I'm going to be careful not to trespass. I guess the private property signs not only relate to the building but also to this piece of what looks like at the moment wasteland. So I'm going to be careful that I don't trespass on somebody else's property. I mean, really, you would have to be a really hard urban explorer to take on a gate like this, wouldn't you? I'm just going to walk down the road here. On our left-hand side is the technology park, but just down the road there's a pathway which leads to the building, and it's got an archway, a plastic and metal archway. Looks like it's partly destroyed, but I'm just wondering whether this was the main entrance for the workers when this was Littlewoods Pools. This is the pathway which I was talking about, and as you can see there's a a canopy of some sort, which is partly destroyed now. It looks like it was a pathway to a main entrance. So if we take a look at this side of the building from the air, you'll be able to see that we're not far from Liverpool city centre. You can see both cathedrals in the background in the wider shots. This is what it used to look like inside the building in its heyday when it was Littlewoods pools. Lines and lines of what looks like mainly women checking punters' coupons for winning lines. This is the underground air raid shelter and some photographs of some of the portraits which have been called the faces of the Blitz. And finally, this is a digital image from someone's imagination of what the building will look like when it's turned into a film and TV studios. And as you can see on the left hand side, there is new buildings there. That's the site of the wasteland that I filmed towards the end of the main video. Okay, so as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and we'll catch up soon.